My biggest fear in life, it's not heights, it's not death. No, if I came into contact with a boggart, it would turn into a Wizarding World movie that earned a Rotten Tomato score. And it saddens me to say that one of those exists. And in all honesty, I probably should have seen it coming. The first Fantastic Beasts was enjoyable but flawed. The biggest flaw for me being the 4th edition of Grindelwald.
Do you think you can hold me?
I don't want to hold you, Johnny Depp. The Credence storyline didn't need Grindelwald's presence. The movie could have worked if it was just Newt and the gang helping Tina save an abused child from an oppressive home. But J.K. Rowling needed to start building a world large enough to warrant the making of 5 movies. Grindelwald being connected to Dumbledore, Hogwarts, the Ministry, the Wizarding World in general, made him a key component to keeping the world of this new series from being limited to the creatures in Newt's briefcase and the people he invites in. But here's the thing. The briefcase and the people around it were the strongest parts of that first film. Relationships in general have been the strongest parts of all the Wizarding World films.
Really?
Yep.
After those 7 books, there was no denying J.K.'s world-building skills, but it was when the films zoomed in on the characters that her stories really shined. This is evidenced best in Order of the Phoenix. Harry is being taunted by Voldemort, being called weak.
So vulnerable.
Dumbledore tells Harry to see the parts within himself that are different from Voldemort.
It isn't how you are like. It's how you are not.
And that's when Harry remembers all the love in his life and realizes Voldemort is the weak one.
You're the weak one, and you'll never know love or friendship. And I feel sorry for you.
Harry's greatest strength over Voldemort was his relationships. The story's greatest strength over other teen fantasy movies and books was the relationships it contained. The magic was in the relationships, and it's no surprise J.K. was able to instill some of that magic into her screenplay for the first Fantastic Beasts movie, particularly between Newt and his creatures. He does not abandon them for being mischievous or kind of creepy. Even with the Obscurus, Newt wanted to study and understand it, not use it the way Grindelwald wanted to use it.
So it's useless without the host.
Useless.
Seeing Newt and his friends care for the beast was like seeing the dodo on the big screen.
Right. I think we need to talk.
If you don't know the Dodo, it's a company that shares videos of people helping animals, like this owl. Newt is the dodo. It's like sexy Dumbledore says.
Do you know why I admire you, Newt? You do not seek power. You simply ask, is the thing right?
He simply asks if a thing is right, and caring for creatures is right. The uncomplicated affection Newt has for beasts like Frank should have been the star of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, with the relationship between Queenie and Jacob being the co-star.
Oh, you slay me.
Their relationship mirrors our relationship to magic. We are Jacob, a muggle who stumbled into this magical world, and Queenie is J.K. Rowling, welcoming us into
Now
it
you, me, vote.
and showing us all of its wonders. Queenie accepting Jacob so quickly makes the audience think maybe we could actually be a part of that world, which is why that rain scene is so heartbreaking.
I was never even supposed to be here. I was never supposed to know.
We were never supposed to know about magic.
I gotta go.
We were never meant to stay in that world. Magic has always been just out of reach. That scene embodies a tinge of disappointment one feels, or at least I feel, every time I reach the end of a Wizarding World story. Once the credits roll, once the book ends, I'm reminded that I can't live in that world. the best we can do is read and watch. But that's why the end scene is enough to lift our spirits. Queenie visits Jacob, and he recognizes her. That means more movies and more time to hang out and pretend we're friends with these characters. At least, that's what I hope for. More time with Queenie and Jacob and Newt and his creatures. But then the title of the new film was released. When I say I should have seen the rotten reviews coming, I mean I should have paid attention to that title. The Crimes of Grindelwald. Not the merits of Muggles, which might have focused on normalizing Jacob and Queenie's relationship. Not the journey into the Forbidden Forest, which might have been about Newt studying the creatures in the Forbidden Forest. Not anything involving the characters we were starting to love. That title was a warning that they were doubling down on the weakest part of the previous film. That unneeded twist. A twist that was more disappointing than anything because Colin Farrell had done a great job, and I'd be more convinced that sexy Dumbledore fell in love with Colin Farrell than albino Johnny Depp. But that's beside the point. Just like the Grindelwald twist fell beside the point. Anything in that first movie that didn't involve creatures or the main four felt beside the point. But the sequel insisted on making what should have been besides the point. That last sentence is a little confusing, but what I basically mean is the Crimes of Grindelwald favored world building over character development, and that's where its errors lie. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them and The Crimes of Grindelwald have the same exact runtime of 2 hours and 13 minutes. But while the first movie only had the Credence and Grindelwald storyline distracting from the relationships, The Crimes of Grindelwald has that Credence and Grindelwald storyline, plus a Credence and Nagini storyline, plus a Lita Lestrange and Newt storyline, plus a Lita and Yusuf storyline, plus a Yusuf and Tina storyline, plus a Newt and Theseus storyline. It's the same amount of runtime, with more than quadruple the amount of storylines distracting from the core relationships many wanted to see developed after the first film. Now, the fact that the sequel didn't build on the strengths of its predecessor was disappointing. But I'm a Potterhead.
Gryffindor!
Give me 2 hours of Flitwick, lecturing on charms, and I'll leave the theater happy. What I found really disappointing is there's no scene of Johnny Depp turning back into Colin Farrell and making out with Jude Law. Just kidding. That'll never happen. Hollywood's a coward. What I actually found most disappointing about The Crimes of Grindelwald is not only does it not focus on the relationships developed in the previous film, it negates them. Queenie and Jacob supposedly still love each other, but it's hard to believe that when they're split apart and pissed at each other for 95% of the movie. Queenie mind controls Jacob with a love charm. Jacob hurts Queenie by calling her crazy. The couple we saw in the first film is nowhere to be seen in the second. And sure, relationships disintegrate.
I can't see anything that I don't like about you.
But you
Right
will.
now I can't.
But you will.
But that Eternal Sunshine-esque disintegration happens after some time is spent together. Crimes of Grindelwald does take place about a year after Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, but instead of showing Queenie and Jacob spend that year growing together and growing apart, the film fast forwards for the sake of world building by making Queenie join Grindelwald's army. She enters that ring of fire, she stands by his side. That is disappointing scene number 1. Yes, she joins Grindelwald because he says he'll build a world in which muggles like Jacob can marry magical folk like Queenie, but the first Fantastic Beast sets up a Queenie who wouldn't leave Jacob behind. It looked like she was, but after the rain scene, she's the one to reach out to him and bring him back to the wizarding world. Earlier, she's the one to tell him that he's one of them.
What, you're not gonna obliviate me?
Of course not. You're one of us now.
Like I said, she's Jacob's J.K. Rowling, a magical guide showing him the world of witches and wizards. J.K. wouldn't leave our side, just like Queenie wouldn't leave Jacob's side. The relationship is meant to make us believe that the no-mag and magical could coexist if it weren't for the MACUSA, the Magical Congress of the United States of America, and all of its rules, including the Rappaport Law, which says intermarriage and even friendship between the magical and non-magical is illegal. By having Jacob and Queenie tear each other apart, The Crimes of Grindelwald seems to say the MACUSA is right. There is no room for muggles in the magical realm. Jacob should have been left in the rain because his relationship with Queenie wouldn't have worked out anyway. I'm sure Jacob and Queenie will reunite, but the way they split was clumsy and probably shouldn't have happened at all, especially since Queenie is a mind reader.
You're a legilimate.
If anyone could see past Grindelwald's rhetoric, it should have been her.
It is said that I hate les noms magiques. I do not hate them. I do not.
Now, Grindelwald is probably a powerful enough wizard to counteract her legitimacy, but that's never addressed in the film, and it's a problem that could have been avoided if instead of Queenie joining Grindelwald, it was Tina. She was already angry at Newt after hearing that he was with Aleida. She has no beast to turn to. She can't read minds. She had already been slighted by the MACUSA.
You made your position here quite clear, Miss Goldstein.
Yes, Madam President, but
You're no longer an Auror.
She is the most vulnerable character in that universe.
Hey, you, Tina?
Yes, Mrs. Esposito?
Are you alone?
Always alone, Mrs. Esposito.
Her going to Grindelwald's side would have made more sense, and it would have given Newt a personal reason to fight Grindelwald instead of only an ideological one. But whatever. They sacrificed Queenie and Jacob's chemistry for the sake of making Grindelwald relevant to their story, and it hurt.
Oh, it's ruined!
But they couldn't possibly ruin Newt and the creatures, right? Right? Well, let's talk about disappointing scene number 2. Newt kicks cats. Chris Pratt kicking creatures is fine because his character, Star-Lord, is a bit of a self-centered asshole. Newt, on the other hand, is not. As we said, he is the Dodo of the Fantastic Beasts universe. He does not harm, he helps animals the way the workers helped that owl. Now, imagine if instead of freeing this owl, the workers trapped the owl while epic celebratory music played in the background. That's exactly what happens in the Crimes of Grindelwald. The Madagots do attack Leda, Newt, and Tina, but as the Madagot Wiki and Newt himself state, the cats are harmless unless provoked. They only attacked because Leda tried to stun them. Knowing Newt and how much he cares for magical creatures, you'd expect him to scold Leda for trying to hurt the Madagots. But such criticism never comes. Instead, he flies onto Zuwu and uses its body to do just as Leda did and attack the Madagots. Seeing Newt hurt creatures was like seeing Superman kill Zod. It goes against everything you believed the character was. Eddie Redmayne said himself that Newt has empathy for anyone who's hurt.
Newt has such empathy to anyone that is hurt. It's almost like he's a sort of magnet for damaged people and damaged creatures.
You'd expect him to find an alternative to hurting the Madagot, but he doesn't. And at least Superman shows some regret after having killed Zod. Newt just goes along with his day because the story has to keep moving to keep up with its various plots. The two most disappointing scenes in the Crimes of Grindelwald are a result of world building being prioritized over the relationships between characters and creatures. The Crimes of Grindelwald earned its rotten score. My biggest fear came true, but lucky for us, there's a spell to counteract such fears.
Ridiculous.
As Leda Lestrange says to Newt,
Newt, you never met a monster you couldn't love.
that compassionate Newt is my favorite Newt. While it gets a bit lost in the second film, I believe the Fantastic Beasts franchise still wants us to be more like that compassionate Newt. So I'm gonna do it. Newt looked at the beastly Zuwu and believed it could be as lovable as a kitten. So I'm gonna look at this monster of a franchise and have faith that it can turn into something as lovable as the Harry Potter films. In JK I trust. Fingers crossed the mischief that is too much world building will be managed.